The Martinez family's tiny two-bedroom apartment was a world unto itself, a microcosm of hope, struggle, and unbreakable spirit. Every inch of space told a story of survival and dreams. The kitchen table, scarred and slightly wobbly, was more than just a piece of furniture. It was a classroom, a workspace, a gathering place where life's most important lessons were learned. Maria Martinez's hands told the story of her life. Calloused from years of cleaning houses, fingers occasionally stained with the blue ink of night school homework, they were hands that had fought for every opportunity. She had left Guadalajara with nothing but a ninth-grade education and an iron will to create a better life for her family. Jose, her husband, was cut from the same cloth, a construction worker whose muscles bore the weight of countless hours of back-breaking labor. Young Sarah absorbed everything. From the earliest age, she understood that survival was an art form, and her parents were master artists. She watched her mother study English vocabulary cards while preparing dinner, carefully sounding out words between chopping vegetables and stirring pots. Her father would come home, exhausted from work, but never too tired to quiz her on her school assignments. "Education is your passport," Jose would tell her, his weathered hands gently tracing the pages of her science textbooks. "Where we came from, knowledge is the only thing they can never take away from you." The neighborhood of East Los Angeles was a complex tapestry of struggle and hope. Block parties and community gatherings were a lifeline, where immigrant families created their own support system. Sarah learned early that community was more than just a word. It was a living, breathing entity that sustained families like hers. Her bedroom was her sanctuary. While other kids her age collected toys, Sarah collected knowledge. Her walls were a vibrant collage of science magazine cutouts, intricate diagrams of cellular structures, images of groundbreaking scientists, NASA space exploration photos. Each image was a window to a world beyond the narrow confines of her current circumstances. Nissa Rodriguez, her middle school science teacher, became a pivotal figure in Sarah's life. Unlike other teachers who saw her as just another student, Ms. Rodriguez recognized the spark of extraordinary potential. During after-school tutoring sessions, she would challenge Sarah with advanced concepts, watching with growing excitement as the young girl devoured complex scientific principles. "You see the world differently," Ms. Rodriguez would tell her, sliding advanced research papers across the desk. "Most people look at a problem and see obstacles. You look and see possibilities." The family's financial struggles were a constant backdrop to Sarah's academic pursuits. Every textbook was a precious resource, carefully protected and studied. Sarah learned to be resourceful, borrowing books from libraries, participating in free online courses, watching scientific documentaries whenever possible. Her hunger for knowledge knew no boundaries. Summer vacations were not times of leisure, but of intense learning. While other kids watched television or played video games, Sarah would accompany her father to construction sites, observing how complex structures were built. She saw parallels between construction and scientific research. Both required precision, planning, and an ability to see the entire system, not just individual components. Her mother's night school English classes became a family affair. Sarah would help her mother prepare, correcting pronunciations, explaining idioms. These moments were more than language lessons. They were windows into the art of persistence, of pushing beyond perceived limitations. The Martinez family's dinner conversations were unlike those in most households. They discussed current events, scientific discoveries, and the importance of education, with the same passion other families might discuss sports or local gossip. Jose would bring home newspapers, circling articles about scientific breakthroughs, challenging Sarah to explain the complex concepts. "Knowledge is a weapon," he would say, his eyes sparkling with pride. "And you, Mihija, are going to change the world." These weren't just empty words of encouragement. They were a family philosophy, a collective dream that transformed their small apartment into an incubator of potential. Sarah understood from a young age that her pursuit of scientific knowledge was not just a personal journey, but a collective mission away to honor her parents' sacrifices. To prove that immigrant children could not just participate in the American dream, but redefine it. By the time Sarah reached high school, she was already conducting independent research, participating in science competitions, and dreaming of laboratories where she could unlock the mysteries of the universe. Her parents might not have understood every scientific term she used, but they understood the most important language of all, the language of possibility. The roots of her resilience were deep, nourished by love, hardship, and an unshakable belief that knowledge could transform lives. Sarah Martinez was more than just a promising student. She was a living testament to the power of dreams, of education, of a family's unwavering support. Her journey was just beginning. The first time Sarah Martinez walked through Stanford's hallowed gates, the world seemed to shift on its axis. Everything was different: the manicured lawns that looked like they'd been groomed with surgical precision, the historic buildings that whispered centuries of privilege, the students who moved with an effortless confidence that spoke of generational academic success. She was acutely aware of how different she looked. Her second-hand blazer, carefully pressed the night before, felt like armor against the unspoken judgments that seemed to hang in the air. Financial aid documents were tucked carefully in her backpack, a constant reminder of the scholarships and grants that had made this moment possible. The medical research program was more than an academic pursuit. It was a battlefield. Each lecture hall, each research seminar, each laboratory became a proving ground where Sarah would have to fight not just for her ideas, but for her very right to be there. Her first organic chemistry class was a crucible. Professor Henderson, a veteran researcher with decades of experience, had a reputation for being particularly harsh on students he deemed unprepared. The lecture hall was a sea of predominantly white and affluent students, many wearing expensive watches and carrying designer backpacks that likely cost more than a month of her family's rent. Sarah sat in the front row, her notebook pristine, her focus laser-sharp. While other students seemed more interested in networking or checking their phones, she absorbed every word, every diagram, every nuanced explanation. Her preparation was meticulous hours of additional study, supplementary readings, connecting concepts in ways that went beyond the standard curriculum. It wasn't just about academic survival. For Sarah, each class was a chance to honor her parents' sacrifices. Every late-night study session was a conversation with her father's words. Education is your passport. Every complex problem solved was a tribute to her mother's resilience. The microaggressions were constant, subtle but persistent. Comments that seemed innocuous on the surface but cut deep. "You're so articulate," a classmate would say, as if being well-spoken was somehow unexpected. Study group invitations that never came. Subtle glances that suggested she didn't quite belong. But Sarah had learned resilience from her family. Each obstacle became an opportunity. When she was overlooked for research assistantships, she created her own opportunities. She reached out to professors directly, proposing independent research. Projects that were so meticulously planned, so intellectually robust, that they couldn't be ignored. Her breakthrough came during a viral immunology seminar. While discussing emerging viral mutation patterns, Sarah proposed a radical approach that challenged existing research methodologies. Most students were content to accept established theories. Sarah saw them as starting points, not final conclusions. Professor Elena Rodriguez, a renowned researcher in viral genetics, was the first to truly see Sarah's potential. During a one-on-one meeting, she looked at Sarah's research proposal with a mixture of surprise and excitement. "You're not just asking how things are," she told Sarah. "You're asking how they could be. The financial strain was constant. While other students worried about social events or internship competitions, Sarah worked multiple jobs. She tutored undergraduate students, worked night shifts at the campus library, and still managed to maintain a near-perfect academic record. Her laptop, a refurbished model held together with careful repairs, was her most prized possession, a gateway to knowledge that her parents could never have imagined. Her doctoral thesis proposal was a testament to her unique perspective. While traditional researchers were looking at viral responses as reactive mechanisms, Sarah proposed a predictive model that could potentially revolutionize vaccine development. It was audacious, borderline revolutionary, exactly the kind of approach that made established researchers uncomfortable. The preliminary research meetings were brutal. Senior researchers picked apart her proposal, their questions feeling more like attacks than genuine scientific inquiry. But Sarah had learned from her parents that true progress comes from standing your ground. "Interesting theory," one senior researcher said, his tone dripping with condescension, "but hardly practical." Sarah would smile. Practical was a word used by those afraid to imagine something different. Her support system was her lifeline. Late-night video calls with her parents, who would listen to her research challenges with unwavering support. Her mother would translate complex scientific explanations into simple Spanish, ensuring she never forgot where she came from. Her father would remind her of the construction sites where he learned that every great structure starts with a vision that others can't yet see. By her final year, Sarah was no longer just surviving in the academic world, she was beginning to redefine it. Her research proposals were gaining attention, not just for their scientific rigor, but for their transformative potential. She wasn't just a student anymore. She was becoming a researcher who could see beyond the established boundaries of scientific understanding. The academic battlefield had tested her. But Sarah Martinez was not just surviving. She was preparing to change everything. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention Research Facility was a labyrinth of unwritten rules, invisible hierarchies, and complex social dynamics that no academic training could fully prepare someone for. Sarah Martinez stepped into this world knowing she was more than just a new researcher. She was an interloper in a carefully guarded ecosystem. The building itself was a monument to scientific achievement. Glass and steel stretched upward, a cathedral of research where groundbreaking discoveries were born daily. But Sarah quickly learned that discoveries were only part of the equation. Here, power was currency, and she was starting with an empty account. Dr. Robert Harrison embodied the old guard of medical research. 62 years old, with silver hair and piercing blue eyes, it had seen decades of scientific evolution. He was the facility's lead researcher, a position he guarded with the territorial instinct of an apex predator. His office was a museum of achievements, framed awards, photographs with previous CDC directors, research papers that had shaped entire fields of medical understanding. The morning briefings were Sarah's first real taste of the facility's internal politics. The conference room was a theater of professional performance, where each researcher carefully crafted their persona. Harrison would sit at the head of the table, his presence filling the space, commanding attention with a mere glance. Sarah's initial research proposals were met with a particular brand of institutional dismissal. It wasn't outright rejection that would have been too direct. Instead, her ideas were met with a slow, calculated dismantling. Subtle comments, raised eyebrows, questions designed not to explore her research, but to undermine her confidence. "Interesting approach," Harrison would say, his tone suggesting anything but genuine interest. "But perhaps we should consider more established methodologies." The other researchers, mostly men, mostly white, mostly over 40, would nod in silent agreement. It was a choreographed dance of institutional gatekeeping that Sarah recognized immediately. She had seen similar dynamics growing up, watching Her parents navigate a world designed to keep them on the margins. But Sarah was not her parents' daughter for nothing. She began to map the facility's true landscape. Not the one documented in organizational charts, but the real network of influence. Who really made decisions? Who had the ear of the department heads? Where were the actual power brokers? Her strategy was patient and precise. While others competed for visibility, Sarah focused on the work. She volunteered for projects others found mundane. She stayed late, arrived early. Her meticulousness became her weapon. The laboratory became her sanctuary. Here, data didn't care about gender, race, or professional pedigree. Here, a hypothesis was judged by its merit, not the background of its creator. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, the facility's senior virologist, became an unexpected ally. Unlike many of her colleagues, Elena recognized something special in Sarah's approach. During a late-night conversation over stale coffee, she offered advice that would reshape Sarah's entire approach. "They will try to make you invisible," Elena told her, her voice low and serious. "Your job is to become so brilliant that invisibility becomes impossible." Sarah's research began to focus on viral mutation patterns that most researchers considered too complex, too theoretical. While others were looking at how viruses attacked, she was investigating their fundamental adaptive mechanisms. It was like studying not just the soldier, but the entire strategic system of an invasive army. The microaggressions were constant. Comments that seemed innocuous on the surface, but carried sharp edges. "You're so articulate," a senior researcher would say, as if well-spoken communication was a surprise. Invitations to team-building events had never seemed to materialize. Conversations that would subtly stop when she approached. But Sarah had been preparing for these battles her entire life. Her parents had taught her that survival was an art form. Her academic journey had been a training ground. And now, in this sterile laboratory with its pristine equipment and guarded knowledge, she was preparing to wage a different kind of war. A war fought with data, with persistence, with an intellect that refused to be marginalized. Each rejected proposal, each dismissive comment became fuel. Sarah wasn't just conducting research. She was building a revolution, one meticulously documented experiment at a time. The invisible barrier was real. But Sarah Martinez was about to prove that invisible didn't mean impenetrable. Her true work was just beginning. The laboratory at 3 a.m. was a world unto itself. Moonlight filtered through reinforced windows, casting soft shadows across rows of advanced equipment. Most researchers would have long since gone home, but Sarah Martinez understood that breakthrough moments rarely followed conventional schedules. Her current research wall was a complex tapestry of interconnected thoughts, a massive whiteboard covered in diagrams, mathematical equations, viral mutation models, and what looked like chaos to the untrained eye. But to Sarah, it was a living, breathing map of scientific possibility. The viral genome had always been viewed as a static entity by most researchers. They saw it as a fixed blueprint, something to be studied and understood in its current state. Sarah saw something entirely different. To her, viruses were living systems of adaptive intelligence, capable of near-instantaneous reconfiguration. Her breakthrough began with an unexpected intersection of disciplines. During a late-night research session, she found herself drawing parallels between viral mutation patterns and complex adaptive systems studied in computer science. Machine learning algorithms, with their ability to predict and adapt, suddenly seemed like the perfect lens to understand viral behavior. Years of watching her parents navigate complex social systems had taught Sarah something fundamental about adaptation. Just as her father had learned to survive and thrive in a construction industry that wasn't built for immigrants, viruses demonstrated an extraordinary capacity for survival and transformation. The traditional approach to viral research was reactive. Researchers would study a virus after it had caused damage, developing vaccines and treatments in response. Sarah's model proposed something revolutionary, a predictive approach that could anticipate viral mutations before they occurred. Her preliminary mathematical models were unlike anything the research facility had seen. She was essentially creating a predictive immune system, not just responding to threats, but forecasting and neutralizing them before they could fully develop. The computational requirements were massive. Sarah spent weeks optimizing her algorithms, running simulations that pushed the facility's most powerful computers to their limits. She wrote custom code that combined genetic sequencing techniques with machine learning algorithms, creating a hybrid approach that challenged everything her colleagues understood about viral research. Dr. Elena Rodriguez was the first to truly appreciate the magnitude of Sarah's work. During a private review of her research, Alana's eyes widened with a mixture of excitement and disbelief. "You're not just studying viruses," Elena said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You're learning their language." The core of Sarah's breakthrough was a radical reframing of viral understanding. Most researchers saw viruses as simple biological machines. Sarah saw them as complex adaptive systems with their own form of intelligence capable of rapid reconfiguration, learning, and survival. Her model proposed a multidimensional approach to viral research. Instead of linear predictive models, she developed a three-dimensional mapping system that could track potential mutation pathways. It was like creating a weather forecast for viral evolution, predicting not just where a virus might go, but all potential paths it could take. The mathematical complexity was staggering. Each simulation required processing power that would have been impossible just a few years earlier. Sarah wrote custom machine learning algorithms that could analyze genetic sequences at a molecular level, identifying potential mutation vectors with unprecedented accuracy. Her work drew from multiple disciplines: virology, computer science, genetic engineering, and complex systems theory. It was an approach so interdisciplinary that it defied traditional research categorizations. Late one night, surrounded by screens filled with complex genetic sequences and predictive models, Sarah realized she was looking at something more than a research breakthrough. This was a fundamental reimagining of how we understand biological adaptation. The potential applications were mind-boggling. Her model could potentially revolutionize vaccine development, offering a predictive approach that could dramatically reduce response times to emerging viral threats. It wasn't just about understanding viruses anymore. It was about anticipating them. Dr. Harrison, who had been consistently dismissive of her work, would soon be forced to confront a reality he had never imagined. Sarah's research wasn't just another incremental scientific study. It was a paradigm shift. As the first light of dawn began to filter into the laboratory, Sarah looked at her research wall, no longer just a collection of ideas, but a blueprint for a new scientific understanding. She had done more than develop a new research model. She had discovered a new way of seeing the world. The decision to become her own test subject wasn't made lightly. Sarah understood the magnitude of what she was about to do, a decision that would challenge every conventional scientific protocol, risking her entire career and potentially her life. Her laboratory notebook was a testament to months of meticulous preparation. Each page was filled with calculations, potential risk assessments, contingency plans. The vaccine prototype was more than a scientific experiment. It was a carefully constructed bridge between theoretical possibility and practical application. The genetic markers she had developed were revolutionary. Unlike traditional vaccine approaches that relied on weakened or inactivated viral components, Sarah's method created a dynamic, adaptive protective mechanism. It was like designing an intelligent shield that could learn and respond to viral threats in real time. Her parents would have been terrified if they knew the full extent of her plans. Maria and Jose Martinez had always encouraged her education, but this went beyond anything they could have imagined. Sarah remembered her father's words about taking calculated risks, about proving yourself in a world that constantly questioned your worth. The ethical review process was intentionally avoided. Sarah knew the Institutional Review Board would never approve such an experimental approach. Her mentor, Dr. Elena Rodriguez, was the only person who knew the full extent of her plans. "You're walking a razor's edge," Elena warned her during their last private conversation. Her eyes were a mixture of concern and admiration. "One miscalculation could destroy everything you've worked for." Sarah's preparation was comprehensive. She had created multiple versions of the vaccine prototype, each more refined than the last. Her medical background gave her a unique advantage. She understood not just the theoretical implications, but the precise physiological risks. The night before the experiment, she documented everything: personal medical history, baseline health metrics, potential contraindications. Her apartment was a strange mixture of scientific precision and personal vulnerability. Research papers were stacked alongside personal journals, medical equipment next to family photographs. She thought about the generations of scientists who had taken similar risks, the researchers who had tested vaccines on themselves, who had pushed the boundaries of medical understanding. This was more than a personal experiment. It was a continuation of a long scientific tradition of personal commitment. The first injection was administered at 3:17 a.m. Sarah's hands were steady, her breathing controlled. Years of preparation had led to this moment. Each movement was calculated, each step documented with scientific precision. Initial reactions were carefully monitored. Temperature, blood pressure, cellular response, everything was tracked with an almost superhuman level of detail. She had created a custom monitoring system that would track her body's response at a molecular level, capturing data that traditional medical monitoring would miss. Hours turned into days. The initial results were promising, but not conclusive. Her prototype showed an extraordinary ability to adapt to simulated viral challenges. It was like watching an intelligent system learn and grow in real time, creating protective mechanisms that went beyond traditional immune responses. Dr. Rodriguez was both her lifeline and her most critical observer. Daily check-ins became a complex dance of scientific inquiry and personal support. "You're rewriting the rules," Elena would tell her, "but make sure you're around to explain how you did it." The risks were immense. A single miscalculation could lead to catastrophic immune response, potential long-term health complications, or complete failure of the prototype. Sarah had calculated these risks with the same precision she applied to her research. Her family remained unaware of the full extent of her experiment. Weekly phone calls were carefully managed, conversations steered away from the specifics of her research. Her mother would talk about neighborhood news. Her father would share stories from construction sites, and Sarah would listen, creating a sense of normalcy that belied the revolutionary work happening in her laboratory. Weeks of monitoring revealed something extraordinary. The vaccine prototype wasn't just effective, it was adaptive in ways no one had previously imagined. It demonstrated an ability to learn from potential viral challenges, creating a dynamic protective mechanism that could potentially revolutionize vaccine development. Sarah understood that this was more than a personal experiment. This was a moment that could change how we understand human immune responses, how we approach viral threats, how we conceptualize medical intervention. As she documented the final stages of her experiment, Sarah realized she had done more than create a vaccine prototype. She had created a blueprint for a new understanding of human biological potential. The scientific world was about to change, and she was standing at the very edge of that transformation. The CDC conference room had witnessed countless presentations, but nothing could have prepared it for what was about to unfold. The air was thick with tension, a mixture of professional skepticism and barely concealed anticipation. Dr. Robert Harrison sat at the head of the table, his usual condescending smirk carefully positioned, a mask of professional detachment that had intimidated countless researchers before Sarah. Sarah Martinez walked in with a precision that spoke volumes. Her presentation materials were meticulously organized, her data so thoroughly documented that it bordered on the obsessive. Years of being underestimated had taught her that brilliance was her best defense. The room was a carefully curated representation of scientific hierarchy. Senior researchers occupied the center seats, their decades of experience worn like armor. Younger researchers lined the periphery, watching with a mixture of hope and trepidation. Sarah knew she was about to challenge everything they understood about viral research. Her presentation began not with grand statements, but with a series of complex molecular diagrams that seemed to pulse with living intelligence. Each slide was a carefully constructed narrative, revealing the intricate adaptive mechanisms of her vaccine prototype. She wasn't just presenting data, she was telling a story of scientific reimagination. Dr. Harrison's initial approach was predictably dismissive. Interesting theoretical work, he interrupted early in the presentation, his tone dripping with patronizing condescension. But how does this translate to real-world application? Sarah had anticipated this. Her response was surgical. She rolled up her sleeve, revealing the most powerful evidence possible herself. The room went silent. Her self-experimentation was more than a scientific demonstration. It was a statement about the very nature of scientific progress. Each data point she presented was backed by her own physiological response, a living testament to her research's potential. Independent medical experts brought in to verify her claims found themselves facing something unprecedented. Sarah's vaccine prototype demonstrated an adaptive capability that defied existing understanding of immunological responses. It wasn't just a vaccine, it was an intelligent system that could predict and neutralize viral threats before they could fully develop. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, who had been Sarah's silent supporter, now became her most vocal advocate. "What we're seeing," she told the room, her voice cutting through the initial skepticism, "is nothing short of a paradigm shift in viral research." The verification process was grueling. Sarah underwent a battery of tests that would have broken lesser researchers. Blood work, genetic sequencing, immunological challenges. Each test was an opportunity to prove or disprove her groundbreaking approach. But the data was irrefutable. Dr. Harrison's transformation was a study in professional humility. The man who had once dismissed Sarah as an inexperienced outlier now found himself facing a scientific breakthrough that would redefine entire fields of medical research. The media began to circulate early reports. Groundbreaking vaccine approach challenges existing medical understanding, one headline read. Another proclaimed, young researcher revolutionizes viral defense mechanisms. Sarah understood the magnitude of what she had accomplished. This was more than a personal victory. It was a moment that could potentially save countless lives, reshape how we approach viral threats, and challenge the existing medical research paradigm. Her phone began to ring. Research institutions from around the world sought interviews. Funding proposals that had once been rejected now came flooding in. The scientific community was being forced to reckon with a breakthrough they had never anticipated. During a particularly intense press conference, a veteran medical journalist asked the question everyone was thinking. How did you manage to achieve something that entire research teams have been unable to do? Sarah's response was characteristic of her entire approach. Science isn't about who you are, she said, her voice steady and clear. It's about how you see the world's possibilities. The confrontation was about more than just validating a single research approach. It was a moment that challenged institutional barriers, questioned established scientific methodologies, and proved that breakthrough thinking could come from anywhere. Dr. Harrison, who had once been her greatest critic, now found himself introducing her at scientific conferences. The man who had once tried to marginalize her was now championing her work. As the initial excitement began to settle, Sarah understood that this was just the beginning. Her breakthrough was not an endpoint, but a starting point for an entirely new approach to medical research. The scientific world would never be the same. The transformation was both sudden and gradual. One moment, Sarah Martinez was a relatively unknown researcher fighting for recognition. The next, she became the face of a scientific revolution that would reshape medical research for generations. The invitations began to arrive like a flood. Scientific conferences, medical symposiums, national research forums, each wanted her perspective, her story, her groundbreaking approach. Major networks sought interviews, science magazines prepared cover stories, and academic institutions competed to host her lectures. But Sarah understood that true impact went far beyond personal accolades. Her first major national speaking engagement was at the annual National Medical Research Symposium in Washington, D.C. The venue was unlike anything she had experienced. A massive convention center filled with the most brilliant minds in medical research. Researchers from around the world had gathered, and she was the unexpected centerpiece. As she walked onto the stage, Sarah thought about her parents, Jose and Maria Martinez, who had worked countless hours to give her opportunities, who had believed in her when no one else would. She wore a deep blue blazer that her mother had helped her choose, a subtle reminder of her roots. The audience was a sea of established researchers, funding directors, and emerging scientific talent. Many had read about her breakthrough, but seeing her in person was something entirely different. She was not the stereotype they had imagined, not the passive researcher, not the token diversity speaker. She was a force of intellectual precision. Her presentation was more than a scientific discourse. It was a narrative of possibility. She spoke about her research not as a technical achievement, but as a testament to innovative thinking. She discussed how her approach challenged existing paradigms, how scientific innovation required looking beyond established boundaries. Science is not about confirming what we already know, she told the packed auditorium. It's about having the courage to imagine what we have not yet conceived. The media coverage was unprecedented. Time magazine featured her on its cover with the headline, "The Future of Medicine: How Sarah Martinez is Rewriting Scientific Possibilities." Scientific American dedicated an entire issue to her research approach, breaking down the complex molecular mechanisms of her vaccine prototype. But Sarah's true impact extended far beyond media recognition. She used her newfound platform strategically. Speaking engagements became opportunities to advocate for more inclusive research environments. She highlighted the systemic barriers that prevented brilliant minds from marginalized communities from accessing scientific opportunities. Universities began creating scholarship programs inspired by her journey. Research institutions started developing mentorship initiatives targeting first-generation college students and researchers from underrepresented backgrounds. Her story became a blueprint for institutional change. Young researchers, particularly women and minorities, saw in Sarah a possibility model. She received thousands of letters and emails from students who found hope in her narrative. Each message was a reminder that her journey was about more than personal achievement. It was about creating pathways for others. The National Institutes of Health began restructuring research grant processes inspired by the innovative approach she had demonstrated. Funding mechanisms that had previously favored traditional research methodologies started to evolve, creating space for more diverse and transformative scientific thinking. Her parents watched this transformation with a mixture of pride and disbelief. Jose would clip every newspaper article, every magazine feature. Maria would show the stories to their entire neighborhood, her voice filled with a mother's profound joy. Scientific institutions that had once marginalized her now sought her guidance. She was invited to serve on advisory boards, to help reshape research protocols, to mentor emerging researchers. Her perspective was no longer seen as an outlier. It was recognized as visionary. During a congressional hearing on medical research funding, Sarah testified about the importance of supporting innovative approaches. Her testimony was a masterclass in communicating complex scientific concepts to policymakers. She didn't just present data. She told a story of human potential. Innovation doesn't have a race, a gender, or a predetermined background, she told the committee. It has only one requirement, the courage to see what others cannot. Her research began to have tangible global implications. Developing countries that had previously struggled with rapid vaccine development saw her approach as a potential game-changer. International medical conferences began discussing her work as a potential standard for future viral research. As the year progressed, the awards began to accumulate. The Breakthrough Prize in Life Sciences, a MacArthur Genius Grant, invitations to speak at global forums. But Sarah remained grounded, understanding that these were not endpoints, but platforms for continued innovation. She was rewriting the rules of scientific research, one breakthrough at a time. A new scientific paradigm, reimagining possibility. 5 years after her groundbreaking research, the medical research landscape had been fundamentally transformed. The Martinez Institute for Adaptive Medical Research stood as a testament to a new way of thinking, a research facility that was more than just a laboratory, but a beacon of inclusive scientific innovation. Sarah's approach had become more than a methodology. It was a philosophy, a way of understanding scientific discovery that challenged every traditional boundary. The institute she had founded was unlike any research facility that had come before. It, located in a purposefully diverse neighborhood of Los Angeles, it was a deliberate challenge to the ivory tower mentality that had long dominated scientific research. Her recruitment process was revolutionary. Traditional academic credentials were no longer the sole criteria for entry. Sarah looked for something different, a combination of intellectual curiosity, innovative thinking, and personal resilience that went beyond standard academic metrics. Researchers came from diverse backgrounds: first-generation college students, individuals from underrepresented communities, those who had been overlooked by traditional research institutions. The global impact of her work was staggering. During the next major viral outbreak, her adaptive vaccine methodology proved to be a game-changer. Where traditional approaches would have taken months or years to develop effective responses, her team could predict and neutralize potential viral threats in weeks. Governments and international health organizations began to restructure their approach to medical research. The adaptive model Sarah had developed was no longer seen as experimental. It was becoming the new standard. Developing countries, which had previously been left behind in medical research, now found themselves at the forefront of scientific innovation. Her personal life had transformed as well. Sarah had become more than a researcher. She was a global thought leader, a symbol of what was possible when traditional barriers were dismantled. Speaking engagements took her around the world, but she remained committed to her core mission of democratizing scientific research. The Martinez Scholarship program had become a powerful force for change. Each year, the Institute sponsored dozens of researchers from backgrounds similar to Sarah's first-generation students, immigrants, individuals from marginalized communities. The scholarship was more than financial support. It was a comprehensive mentorship program that provided research opportunities, professional development, and a support network. During a TED Talk that went viral globally, Sarah articulated her vision. Science is not a privilege, she told the packed auditorium. It's a collective human endeavor. Every brilliant mind deserves a chance, regardless of their background. Her parents watched her transformation with a mixture of pride and wonder. Jose, now retired, would tell stories in their neighborhood about his daughter who had changed the world. Maria continued to be her daughter's strongest supporter, understanding better than anyone the journey Sarah had undertaken. The Institute became a model for inclusive scientific research. Collaboration replaced competition. Interdisciplinary approaches became the norm rather than the exception. Researchers from different fields, computer science, genetics, epidemiology, worked together in ways that had previously been unimaginable. Global health organizations began adopting her adaptive research model. What had once been a revolutionary approach was now becoming standard practice. Vaccine development times were dramatically reduced. Potential viral threats could be anticipated and neutralized with unprecedented speed and precision. Sarah's personal research continued to push boundaries. She was no longer just studying viral responses. She was reimagining the entire concept of human biological adaptation. Her team was exploring how their adaptive research models could be applied to other fields, from cancer research to genetic disorders. The awards and recognitions continued to accumulate. A Nobel Prize nomination, multiple honorary doctorates. But Sarah remained focused on the work, on the potential to create meaningful change. During a reunion with her original mentor, Dr. Elena Rodriguez, they reflected on the journey. "You didn't just change medical research," Elena told her. "You changed how we understand human potential." Her story had become more than a personal achievement. It was a blueprint for a new way of thinking about scientific discovery. A reminder that innovation doesn't have a predetermined path, that brilliance can emerge from unexpected places. The little girl from East Los Angeles had not just entered the scientific fortress. She had redesigned its entire architecture. As another generation of researchers began their journey, Sarah Martinez stood as a beacon of possibility, proof that with curiosity, resilience, and an unwavering belief in human potential, anything was possible. The scientific world would never be the same.